Recording.
Yes.
All right, we'll call
We're
this
good.
meeting, the regular meeting of the town council to order. Would you please all join me in the pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
To the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roxanne, please call the roll.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Here.
Mrs. Ingles,
Here.
Mr. Irwin,
Here.
Mr. Marshall, Mrs. McGrattan, Mr. Paul,
Here.
Mrs. Rodriguez,
Here.
Mr. Ryan,
Here.
Mr. Soms.
Here.
7 here, 2 absent.
I have no presentation. Residents, property owners who wish to speak, address to council. I know I have a couple of, I'll start with Joanne Kelly.
Thank
Please.
you. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Yes, Joanne Kelly, 12 Thames View, Pentway, Gales Ferry. I'd like to speak to you tonight about an urgent and appropriate use of ARPA funds to address the critical need for access to mental health services for our residents, particularly our school-aged children. Since the beginning of COVID in March 2020, I have heard from concerned parents, educators, and medical professionals about the impact that the pandemic has had on the emotional well-being of our children. From the anxiety of simply experiencing a pandemic, the isolation from friends and teachers due to remote learning, social distancing and masking, the fear of unmasking while COVID still runs through our community, and the many accommodations they have had to make over these last 2 years, along with the uncertainty of when this will all be over and back to normal. I fear that without assistance, many of our children will not simply go back to normal. Depression, confusion, anxiety, loneliness, and sadness are just a few of the common words I have heard about their state of mind, with some children having pre-existing mental health challenges prior to COVID that were exacerbated by the pandemic. Both learning and behavior is impacted negatively as a result. ARPA funds received by our school district are essential to addressing this learning loss, but addressing the mental health crisis in our students is far beyond the scope of our school's resources of social workers and guidance counselors. In the best of times, access to quality mental health services is difficult, especially for low to moderate income families. Our broken healthcare system is particularly lacking in the area of mental health and is woefully inadequate to meet this need. If you are not a family of financial means with high-end health insurance and the ability to travel outside the immediate area, your options are scarce and wait times for appointments are long. These children need timely access to quality mental health services to include screening, appropriate treatments and therapies, and follow-up. The American Recovery Plan has provided funds to deal with the effects of the pandemic. I cannot think of anything more crucial to expend a significant portion of these funds on than making mental health services available and easily accessible to our residents, primarily school-aged children, but also to our seniors. Other towns have proposed making mental health services a significant feature of their ARPA fund plans that could be studied to see how to best implement for Ledyard. Some are partnering with existing social services agencies and/or their schools, and I'm sure more research would provide more ideas. But to be clear, I'm not suggesting a token amount of money to study the issue or to set up a referral resource. The existing resources in this area are not adequate. We must create something that does not exist. There is not one thing on the current proposed list for spending that I think is as important as this and more appropriate for the use of these funds. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Adrienne, you had also requested?
Yes, I did. Thank you for the opportunity. Good evening, Town Council. My name is Adrienne Parad of 5 Birch Street. I'm a U.S. Navy veteran, family physician, and mother of 3 children attending Gallup Hill and Ledyard Middle Schools currently. I echo Mrs. Kelly's concerns about our youth and our seniors. Per descriptions of the Act, one of the purposes of the funding is to build a strong, resilient, and equitable recovery by making investments that support long-term growth and opportunity. We have an opportunity to use the ARPA funds to make a meaningful positive impact on our community for years to come. Prior to the pandemic, we were already in a mental health crisis. As we all know, money talks. If you have good health insurance and the time to go to appointments, you're in a better position, but still at risk. At baseline, there were unmet needs for services. In early 2019, a survey found that 11.0% of adults reported symptoms of depression and anxiety. When this survey was repeated in January of 2021, the number more than tripled to 41.1%. COVID-filled grief and stress were contributors to this, in addition to unstable housing and increasing cost of living. The children and teens may not report symptoms in the same ways, but the social isolation and increased screen time leads to attention deficits, sleep and eating disorders, impaired school performance, and impaired responses to social cues. How do we address these gaps and ensure that our youth will be able to be law-abiding and productive members of society? The answer is certainly not to ask our school system to take an even bigger role. We are already in the bottom 10% of spending per student in our district. We need to delegate these special funds to invest in our future. Our youth need to be equipped to handle all of the new stressors in this society that is changing. We have options to consider funding, maybe 3 counseling sessions with a mental health provider and 1 session with a social worker per at-risk resident. If that doesn't sound feasible, ARPA allows for transfer of funds to a community nonprofit. Perhaps we could utilize an expanded 211 service to fund walk-in hours or vouchers for mental health services, or consider a group counseling session with mental health provider oversight. For our town to continue to thrive, we need to invest in our health and well-being. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else who would like to address the council? Seeing none. Comments to town councilors? Any comments in town? Mary? You're on mute, Mary.
Okay. Am I on?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay. For about 25 years, there's been a walkway between the senior housing and the senior center. It is no longer safe and walkable. The Legend Rotary is going to replace the steps and make it safe and walkable. And they have received a permit from the zoning committee officer. Also, LICEF met this morning. LICEF is Legend Interchurch Emergency Assistance Fund. And the treasurer gave a summary of last year's activities. The board had approved grants for 9 families, and it was mainly in the area of furniture, beds, and help with rent. Unite Connecticut and other government programs are coming to an end. There are 63 Legend residents who are still waiting for rental assistance, but they made it in under the wire. Kristen Chapman, who is the mayor's assistant, meets monthly with other human service personnel. Now that government aid programs are coming to an end, they are seeing an uptick in need. That's all.
Thank you. Any other councilors?
I just have a reminder that Linda Davis's Celebration of Life ceremony is April 2nd at Ledgerd High School from 12 to 3 p.m.
Okay, thank you. Any other councilors? Councilor Psalms?
We don't normally respond to citizen and resident comments, but I just want to report that we also received a letter from Kathy Williams, and I see that she's present. And I have added the suggestion that we provide funds through ARPA, or provide ARPA funding to the list of projects that we have at the Finance Committee, and we will discuss that along with the other projects. So thank you for your comments.
Thank you. Anyone else? Hearing none. Review and approval of prior meeting minutes. Do I hear a motion?
Yep, I move to approve the following. Public hearing minutes of February 23rd, 2022. Regular meeting regular meeting minutes of February 23rd, 2022.
Counselor Rodriguez seconds.
Any discussion?
I just have one correction, and it's on agenda item number 5, page 14 of 23. Down towards, I guess it would be after the motion, it's 1, 2, 3 paragraphs at the end of that. It says that noting that while they were in executive session, that no notes were taken, it says retaken. So should just say were taken.
Thank you. Any other comments, changes? Okay, all those in favor of the, Roxanne, please call the roll.
Mrs. Ingles,
Yes.
Mr. Irwin,
Yes.
Mr. Marshall,
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan,
yes,
Mr. Paul,
Yes.
Mrs. Rodriguez,
Yes.
Mr. Ryan,
Yes.
Mr. Somm,
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski.
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Okay, motion carries. You have your communications list. There are no referrals. Council Subcommittee Liaison reports. We'll start with admin.
Admin met tonight. The committee approved changes to a few policies, nothing controversial, just really clarifications, and approved 2 applications for zoning seats. Each of these items will be on the council agenda in 2 weeks, and there are no action items on tonight's agenda, and that is my report.
Thank you. Any questions for admin? Moving on, community relations.
There is no new report. We have not met since our last meeting. I would like to say that we are meeting next Wednesday, the 16th at 6:30 p.m.
Thank you. Any questions for community relations? Okay, moving on, finance. Councilor Somm.
Finance did meet. They held a regular meeting on Wednesday, March 2nd at 5 p.m. by video conference. And it was reported that errors were discovered in the healthcare cost projections for Board of Ed employees and retirees in fiscal years ending in 2022 and 2023. Changes in healthcare plans and turnover in employees were contributing factors to the error. The current year healthcare budget will run $900,000 to $1 million short as a result of the error, and the shortfall in the projection for the fiscal year 23 will result in a substantial change to the budget that we're about to review starting tomorrow. The committee discussed the issue with the superintendent, the mayor, the business manager, and the finance director, and resolved that the mayor's office and the central office would develop a written procedure for projecting healthcare expenses for all employees and retirees in order to avoid a repeat of errors made in the past. And we are all still working on that. The committee also discussed the criteria for ARPA funded projects and added another criterion that projects would not incur future costs aside from normal maintenance. Councilor Ryan reported that he has been reading about what other towns are doing and noted that many of them look favorably at projects that build community and sustainable resilience. And everything else is on our agenda for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for finance? Moving on, land use. Go ahead, Whit.
Chairman. So you're saying that the cost for the shortfall was errors from the Board of Education regarding healthcare?
I'm not saying where the errors were made. We're still sorting through that, Councilor Irwin, but errors were made and it resulted in a shortfall both in the current year that we're in right now and also the budget projections for the coming year.
Okay, because I believe the Board of Education was quite clear with it last year when they submitted their budget, and it was based from 0 point up, and there wasn't a change from their side, any significant change from what was funded previously.
Yeah, we are still sorting out what happened, and as I mentioned, we changed plans a few years ago. We've had some turnover in employees, and we've still got to get to the bottom of getting the process right so that we understand who needs to do what, so that we can calculate or at least project healthcare expenses accurately.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions? Land use. Council Paul.
Yep, thank you, Chairman. The Land Use Planning Public Works Committee met this past Monday, the 7th, via Zoom at 6. At this meeting, we discussed Public Act 21-1, which is the legalization of cannabis, marijuana retail stores and micro cultivator, and more specifically, the section 83-84, which pertains to a local referendum if at least 10% of the electors petition for a vote to allow certain marijuana sales, or if the town council chooses to forward this question to be included on the ballot on November 8th. This Public Act 212-1 has specific language. 3 of them, one being that shall the sale of recreational marijuana be allowed in the town? 2, shall the sale of cannabis under a specific license or licensee be allowed in the name of the town? Or shall a sale of recreational marijuana be prohibited? No license in the name of the town. We approved our motion to recommend the first choice based on its simplicity of asking the town a straightforward question, basically a yes or no. But if this does go to referendum, we also recommended that facts about the Act 21-1 be made available to the public to help educate voters on the question. We also continued our review of the town-owned properties where Councilor Rodriguez has been working diligently on that and making headway. Lastly, there was a motion to consider Mr. Treaser's suggestion to subdivide the Founders Preserve property to create an approximately 20-acre parcel suitable for an outdoor entertainment venue at the 332 Colonel Lizard Highway. This property was already approved by a special town meeting back in October of 2020 to be transferred to Avalonia Land Conservation. This motion failed at our meeting as we felt that Avalonia was the best fit for this property based on the wetlands, the flood zone, and the sloping landscape of this property, and that it could not support such a large entertainment venue. And that is all. That is my report.
Thank you. Just to further on the marijuana Public Act, I'm going to ask that to be referred to admin and finance to review. Admin for the language, but finance because if it does come into, it does impose a tax levy or potential for a tax levy. So just want to get opinion from both admin and finance. Any other questions for land use?
Kevin, can I just add one quick thing?
Sure.
Just a note that the Planning and Zoning Commission did approve a 1-year moratorium on the sales of cannabis as of the end of December. So 1 year from there.
Any questions for land use? Okay, moving on, liaison reports. Are there any liaison reports?
Yeah, Kevin, it's John here.
Go ahead, John.
All right. Building committee met earlier this week, and Matt Bronin in the meeting, and he reported that the RFP for the school closeout was posted last Thursday on the town website and in the newspapers, and there's already been some interest. So we should be hearing something pretty soon on that. The building management system replacement at GFS is 85% complete. We're just finishing up some graphics and some training on that, and should be fully functioning anytime now. Work will start in about 1 month on the roofing projects, the town hall and the library. The bid was just shy of $192,000. It came a little bit lower than we thought it was going to. There's some other work that has to be done as well with the old solar panels, some prep work, and the unused chimney at the Bill Library. The roof and solar project at the Gales Ferry, Juliet Long, and Central Office will go out to bid as one project, but the cost will be kept separate. Work should start on that around 2023. Some good news coming out of the Gales Ferry Firehouse. Tony Saccone, our chief, has been working for about 10 years on the First Responders Act. Basically provides life insurance for first responders. Up until now, the fire police have been excluded from that. Tony's been working with Joe Corney, he's been at it for 10 years. So now, thanks to Tony's efforts, the fire police nationwide are now covered under the First Responders Act. This includes life insurance for the surviving spouse, insurance for loss of limb, and child education assistance. The signing of the bill was not made public, but Joe Courtney invited Tony to go to Washington to attend with him. And Tony got to meet Joe Biden, shake his hand, and Tony gave Biden his Chiefs badge as part of, I guess, Biden collects them. And part of the First Responder Act is Congress agreed to go back the previous 2 years and cover any first responders who have passed away from COVID, which is kind of the right thing to do. And that's my report.
Yeah, thank you. Any questions for Councilor Marshall? Any other liaison reports? Mr. Councilor Irwin.
Yeah, the Board of Education had a special meeting Wednesday, February 23rd. Basically, our last meeting goes to the same time, where they considered masks for the schools and went ahead and turned those off. Cases continue to be low, and I think at the last count there was one case in the school system, or one new case, I should say, in the school system. That's my report.
Thank you. Any questions for Councilor Irwin? Okay, any other liaisons? Okay, seeing none. Mayor's report.
Good evening, everybody. Just a quick update on COVID cases in Ledge Lake Health District, which are 10 towns, continue to really dramatically decline. There were 201 total cases the last week of February. So 201 cases in the course of a week out of 10 towns is really, really good. Back to kind of a mid-August type of number as the numbers go. Hospitalizations in New London County were down to 8, and there were none on ventilators that I've been made aware of. Ledge Lake is still doing vaccination clinics, but I would tell you that the last 2 weeks they have done clinics. They are literally getting 5 to 10 people during a 2-hour clinic. So next to nobody. They continue to do them, but there's not a lot of takers at this point. Had a CCM legislative meeting on March 3rd. There's a lot of bill tracking and bill testimony going on right now. We had our House leaders on the Zoom meeting, and as Councilor Solms can imagine, I questioned them heavily on the concept of trucking 600,000 tons of waste out of the state of Connecticut starting July 1st and into the states of Michigan and Alabama. I scolded them as to how in the world could a state like Connecticut view that as a plan. So I think I got some pretty good feedback on that in terms of it's not a good plan, it's not a good course of action, and they're going to do their best to try to head that off before we get to the point of putting about 150 tractor trailers of waste on our roads every single day throughout our continuation until this is solved. So hopefully that won't happen. Also an update on MS4, that was the storm drainage legislation that was passed a while ago. The town of Ledyard has, they have hired an independent firm to handle the MS4 drainage calculations for us. That's gone very well, but I would tell you that there are 6 other municipalities in the state of Connecticut that are actually being sued right now for late or non-reporting for MS4. So they're pretty serious about it, and I'm glad that we're not on the receiving end of one of those lawsuits. Also attended the Planning and Zoning Commission's workshop on February 24th. I thought there was a lot of positive feedback and comments regarding the proposed new zoning regulations. This will really streamline our regulations. As recently as last Friday, I met with a commercial developer who was looking to do a project in Ledyard, and he said, I've been in this business for 43 years, and I can't tell you what your regulations say. And that's not a good thing when it's somebody that's as seasoned as that. So we're trying to make those regulations work for everybody, and people, when they pick them up, can actually read them and understand what it's about. Attended the EDC meeting on March 1st. That went really well. I think there's a lot of really good positive energy in that group right now. They are working strongly on the Yale Harvard Regatta event and trying to build a good event around that. It's the oldest collegiate sport in the country, and it's kind of a shame that we don't really embrace that. So I think the EDC is working very hard to make that happen. They're also working on a business survey right now, which is out and about. As you probably are aware, about 5:15 on the 25th, that Friday, there was a fire at Fireside Brick Oven Pizzeria. And I think it's a total loss. The operation was burned very, very badly. So it is closed for now. It's very difficult for the family that owns Fireside because they kind of all work there. It was a family operation. They're working, you've probably seen machines down there trying to put in a new septic system up front right now at the opposite end of the building, because that family's goal was to open what was called the Sunnyside Diner. And now with the loss of Fireside, they have to work very quickly to try to get something open so that they can have their livelihood back. So I reached out to Adam Arpin, the owner, and I said, if there's anything that we can do as a town to help fast track what you're doing, please let us know. We will do whatever is within our power and reach to help you on that. So keep your eyes out for that, and hopefully they'll keep moving. I would also say huge kudos to Gales Ferry Fire Department and Ledyard Fire Department and Mutual Aid. We had a lot of response very, very quickly. And we're fortunate that the loss was truly limited to that one northern end of the building. It could have gone far worse. The budget was delivered to the town clerk on Monday afternoon per the town charter. The budget as it stands right now is a 0.22 mil tax increase, healthcare premiums, the Board of Ed retirees that we have to take into consideration, and of course, labor costs kind of drive a lot of that. I would tell you that the healthcare premium cost isn't actually set yet. We don't get the set number until mid to late April. So what we are planning for is the worst case scenario that we were prepared for by our professionals, which is 8% for an increase. Big kudos to American Ambulance too. February was their single busiest month since they've been with us. They had 111 calls, which is about 4 calls a day, every day of the month. They had 82 hospital transports, 10 motor vehicle accidents, and at least 3 of them involved requiring 2 ambulances at the same time. So, and they did all of that. They got it all covered, and the average response time over the 111 calls was right at 10 minutes, just over 10 minutes and 3 seconds. So outstanding from their efforts. Quick update on regional zoning enforcement. That is a zoning enforcement official that is coming to us through the Council of Governments. There are a lot of these positions that are vacant in the state right now, and we have one that is going to be starting in Ledyard, seasoned veteran, starting on March 21st. So we're looking forward to getting somebody back in there. Mike Cherry has been graciously filling in for us on an interim basis, but he needs to be able to transition out, and we have an opportunity for him to get out. And then the last thing I'll share with you is that I presented a mayoral proclamation to James Cully of Gales Ferry. He lives down in the village, and Mr. Cully turned 100 on Saturday, this past Saturday. So he is our newest centenarian that I am aware of, and a World War II veteran. So congratulations to Mr. Cully for achieving one heck of a milestone. And that is all I have for you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is there any questions? Councilor Irwin.
Once again, you attributed the issue with the health increase to the BOE, and I take umbrage with that. That's been said twice now.
Yeah, so, well, we can't really report on it yet. I think the superintendent and myself are in the process of fact gathering so that we can better understand how a group of retirees was omitted from the budgeting process. but I'm not going to cast aspersions either way based on the facts that we don't have in front of us right now.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the mayor? Councilor Psalms.
I just wanted to comment, as coincidence would have it, 6 or 8 months ago, I was out shellfishing with a person that I met. He happens to be one of the engineers working on the MS4 project, and he complimented our Public Works Director. He said, "We're fortunate to have him. He's one of the best in the state." I thought that was nice to hear.
That's great to hear. And he and I spoke about it today, and I let him know that there are 6 pending lawsuits in the state. And he assured me we will not be one of them because of how far ahead of it we are. And I know that's true.
Good news. Any other questions for the mayor? Seeing none, moving on, old business.
This is Counselor Psalms. I move to remove from the table the motion to authorize overspending the legal fees account number 10101-5310 for legal expenses through June 30, 2022. Funding to be transferred to the legal fee account 101-10101-5310 at year end.
Is there a second?
Counselor Ingalls seconds.
So,
Motion.
so,
Well,
finance-
this is just to remove the motion, Bill.
oh, that's right, no discussion.
No discussion. Roxanne, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Irwin,
Yes.
Mr. Marshall,
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan,
yes,
Mr. Paul,
Yes.
Mrs. Rodriguez,
Yes.
Mr. Ryan,
Yes.
Mr. Psalms,
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ingalls.
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Next item.
Counselor Psalms, I move to authorize overspending the legal fees account 101-10101-5310 for legal expenses through June 30, 2022. Funding to be transferred to the legal fee account 101-10101-5310 at year end.
Second, Counselor Ingalls.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Discussion?
So we tabled this, wanting to have a discussion to better understand the legal fees. We had an executive session just before this meeting for all of the counselors. And we now have a better understanding. I should also state that we don't discuss legal expenses because under advice of CCM, it is a tip off to attorney firms everywhere. So our strategy is to not discuss actual dollar amounts on this. They will be properly accounted for and show up in the budget.
Okay, thank you. Roxanne, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Marshall,
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan,
yes,
Mr. Paul,
Yes.
Mrs. Rodriguez,
Yes.
Mr. Ryan,
Yes.
Mr. Psalms,
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ingalls,
Yes.
Mr. Irwin.
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. New business. Would anybody like to amend the agenda on the new business? Hearing none. Item number 1, finance.
I move to authorize the mayor to submit an application to the State of Connecticut Office of Policy and Management for the 2022 Justice Assistance Grant, JAG, in an amount up to $20,000 for the purchase of portable radios and accessories for the Ledyard Police Department for use on the Connecticut Land Mobile Radio Network.
Is there a second?
Counselor Irwin,
Second.
second.
Discussion?
So this is an item we've been working on for the past few years. We've invested in some base equipment to allow Ledyard Police to communicate with other departments. This is a long-standing move among many emergency services departments for the last 20 years to improve interagency communication. This motion is just to authorize the mayor to apply for the grant. We're not actually authorizing the spending of the money or the purchase at this time.
Any questions?
Just a comment, just to add a little flavor to it from the finance committee. It's in the minutes, but just for everybody's awareness, the 20 grand represents roughly, if I recall correctly, somewhere around a $98,000 total expenditure. The other funding sources are defined in the minutes and are definite funding sources. The grant is the only question mark, but from what we were told during the finance committee meeting, it's not really a question mark. This grant is usually something that we would expect to come through anyway.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Roxanne, please call the roll.
Mrs. McGrattan,
Yes.
Mr. Paul,
Yes.
Mrs. Rodriguez,
Yes.
Mr. Ryan,
Yes,
Mr. Soms,
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ingles,
Yes.
Mr. Irwin.
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed. John Marshall just had to leave just now for work, so
Okay,
he's no longer with.
thank you. Motion carries. Next item.
I move to appropriate and transfer $301,692 from account number 101-88210-59300 transferred funds to account 210-1402-49002 CNR transfers in. In addition, appropriate $301,692 to account number 210-70101-58261 BOE CNR Ag Science. And authorize the Board of Education to spend up to $216,328 as outlined in the Board of Education fiscal year 2021-2022 comprehensive list for agri-science program upon the receipt of the final FY 2022, which was missing, agri-science grant supplemental funds.
Second,
Council
Councilor.
Venus.
Thank you. So the Board of Ed, actually the town of Ledyard receives, we're budgeted to receive $997,428 in total this year for VOAG programs, which includes the expenses for teaching our vocational agri-science programs, as well as investing in the capital plant. And that's what CNR is, that's capital non-recurring. So some of the money goes for capital funds. 216,000 I just mentioned is for capital funds. So far, the town has received two payments of $249,357. We had originally budgeted $695,736, even though we were expecting to receive the $997,000 that's mentioned in the motion. So because the budget is short $301,000 approximately short from what the total amount we receive, we are moving to appropriate the rest of those funds, the $301,000 to the Board of Ed CNR. And the reason we do that is agri-science funds have to be spent on agri-science. They can't be spent anywhere else in the town or even anywhere else in the schools.
Thank you. Any questions? Hearing none. Roxanne, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Paul,
Yes.
Mrs. Rodriguez,
Yes.
Mr. Ryan,
yes,
Mr. Soms,
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ingles,
Yes.
Mr. Irwin,
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan.
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Next item.
I move to approve 4 tax refunds in the combined total amount of $13,515.94, with each one of them exceeding the $2,400 in accordance with tax collector departmental procedures.
second, Councilor Ryan.
So as we typically do, the mayor's office regularly receives notice that taxes have been overpaid. Most often it's because the escrow company pays the taxes, and then the property owner pays the taxes for the same bill. And so then we have to issue a tax refund. If the amount is more than $2,400, that exceeds the mayor's authority to sign off on the refund. So those come before the town council. All four had the proper paperwork. They identified the person, the property owner, as well as the property address and the reason for the overpayment and the request for the refund. So all appears to be in order.
Thank you. Any discussion, questions? Seeing none, Roxanne, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Rodriguez,
Yes.
Mr. Ryan,
Yes.
Mr. Soms,
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ingles,
Yes.
Mr. Irwin,
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan,
yes,
Mr. Paul.
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Would anybody like to make the next motion?
Counselor Rodriguez makes a motion to adjourn.
There's a second.
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 This meeting is adjourned without exception. Thank you, everyone.
Night,
Good
everybody.
night.
Good night.
Night.
Good night, everyone.